Welcome to Design Downtime, the podcast where we celebrate the joys of living a balanced creative life. I'm your host, Guy Siegel, a design director in Toronto, Canada, and I invite you to join me on this journey as we redefine what it means to be a successful design professional. Let's break free from the shackles of hustle culture and embrace the full spectrum of human experience, because life is too precious to be spent only in pursuit of productivity. Today, I'm thrilled to talk to Katie Langerman. Katie is an interface designer specializing in design systems, currently contributing to GitHub's Primer. She focuses on creating flexible, scalable systems that help bridge the gap between design and code. Katie is also passionate about fostering collaboration across teams, sharing insights on leadership as an individual contributor, and tackling challenges like design tokens and asynchronous teamwork. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. And you want to talk to us today about rock climbing.
Yeah, rock climbing. Have you done it before?
That's a really good question. I've done a bit, but I have an issue with heights. So I don't feel that comfortable doing it, to be honest with you.
Okay. I think we'll probably get into that a little bit more.
Oh, I love that. Where does rock climbing come into the picture for you?
Yeah, so I guess just to clarify, we're talking about indoor rock climbing. I have never climbed outdoors, but I am kind of intrigued by that. But I mostly started getting into it a couple of years ago when I moved to San Diego. I think it was it's kind of a big cultural thing here. It seems like a pretty popular thing to do. My partner and I were new to the city, and we were looking for ways to kind of get out, find that third space, use our bodies, use our brains in a different way. And we were kind of following rock climbing. There's a lot of YouTubers that are in this space. And so we had kind of a sense of what it's all about. It looked like a lot of fun. And so we sort of just jumped into it.
That was a few years ago. Was that the thing to do in San Diego?
I think it's one of many things to do in San Diego. I also think outdoor climbing is a thing to do in San Diego, which is why I'm sort of interested in it now. But I think more specifically to me, rock climbing is a thing that a lot of designers and developers like to do. It's definitely kind of a trendy sport. And I think that those types of people are kind of gravitate towards it because of the problem solving aspect of it. Instead of just solving a problem on your computer, as we do all day, you're sort of forced into a physical problem to solve. And it kind of changes depending on the kind of climbing you're doing. So there's lots of different types of climbing. There's bouldering, which is where you're not on any ropes. It's a short climb. It shouldn't take very long. You're going high, but not very high, technically to a safe height, but we'll talk about the safety part of it in a little bit. And so they're kind of short, powerful climbs. And then even within bouldering, there's different styles. And then there's top rope or lead climbing. So top rope is where you are climbing those really big walls that you're probably kind of imagining when you think about indoor rock climbing. And there's a rope at the top and you're hooked in, and you've got someone belaying you maybe, or you're using an auto belay. And it's kind of like a long climb, which should be tiring in a different way. Lead climbing is the same thing, except there's no rope above you. You are just clipping in as you go up, which means that the fall could be a little bit scarier because there might not be a rope above you when you fall. So there's a little bit more risk involved. And that's not something I have ever personally done.
So I'm always curious to know about that first time, because you have an image in your mind of what rock climbing is going to be. And then you go for the first time. How different or similar was it to what you expected?
I think that's kind of interesting, because maybe if you're going into it with no context, I think that experience would be a little bit different, because you're starting from zero. You know that there's climbing involved. You don't know anything about what kind of holds there are, or how routes are set, or how they're graded. They have different levels, easy to hard. In my case, I think I had watched so much YouTube that I had a sense of kind of what I was getting into, where I was kind of watching other people climb. I could sort of emulate that when I started myself, but it was just as scary and intimidating as I imagined it would be, especially For me, I'm also very afraid of heights, but I think climbing is kind of a good way to confront that. So, yeah. I should also say, I am not good at climbing. Like, there's probably much better design climbers that you could be talking to right now who like do it almost like a part-time job. Like they're climbing all the time. They're constantly trying to get better and like level up. I do it for fun. And I actually had an accident climbing in 2023. Now it's 2025 now. So a little while ago, but that has sort of like shifted my perspective on climbing a little bit, but I still do it for all the same reasons.
Tell me about the accident.
Yeah. So this was probably at like my peak, like best climbing because I had been, and still, again, not good, but like better. I was taking lessons, which was really awesome. I had a coach and she was climbing with me once a week and just sort of getting more familiar with different holds and like finding what my weaknesses are. We were mostly doing top rope though with her because bouldering really scares me. I don't like the risk of not being tied to a rope, especially now that I had an accident bouldering. So this was like, I was with two coworkers actually. So that was interesting. One that I had just met for the first time because I work remotely. What a great way to meet someone for the first time. And we were bouldering, which again was like not my comfort zone, but I could do it because I was training top rope. So like I at least had the kind of muscle memory to get through it. But I went up a climb. It was an easy climb. I definitely could do it. It was just higher and a little sloped and freak accidents happen. I got to that top hold. My fingers slipped and I just came straight down and landed poorly. So I landed like directly on my feet, which you should really practice falling and more so like fall on your butt or your back. And I broke my ankle. So it was pretty bad break. I was off my feet for, I don't even remember how many weeks now, like 12 weeks or something. I had surgery, the whole thing. Had my whole ankle reconstructed, basically. Yeah, so that kind of, I mean, it's kind of traumatic in a way, but I'm happy that I'm able to climb still, even though I went through that. And I think that's actually been kind of healing to me to like get back on the wall, even if I have some associations with that are like not so pleasant. And like I said, bouldering, I mean, it's all kind of dangerous in a way. Like any sport there is risk involved. For me, bouldering is just more dangerous than top rope. And so I still struggle to like get to the top of a boulder. I can like start them. I really like horizontal climbs that don't go like vertical, which exist, like a traverse wall. But on a top rope, it feels so much safer and you can kind of like push through that fear and then focus on the other really awesome aspects of climbing that I enjoy.
How difficult was it to get back to rock climbing after the accident?
It was very difficult. My partner is super into climbing. He's like actually good at climbing. So he kept climbing the whole time and getting better. And so I had somebody like close to me who could encourage me. And the coach that I had worked with, she was kind of helping me with the mental aspect of an injury because it's mental and physical. And she had had a really bad injury herself. And now she's a fantastic climber. So I had like a lot of support. And then it was just a matter of like getting back in the gym and just being in that environment and hearing the sounds. The sounds of people falling on the mats is kind of triggering for me because it reminds me of my fall. But like being around that and seeing that it's okay and that people are not constantly breaking their ankle every 2 seconds, I think it really helps you kind of move past that trauma. And I just started really slow. Like I said, I still barely will get to the top of a bouldering problem because I don't feel the risk is worth it to me. And I still don't have like full range of motion back in my ankle. So I have to be kind of careful about footwork. So having the safety of a rope is like so much more comfortable for me.
You said that you landed wrong in that accident, and which leads me to believe that there are certain exercises or things you can train to fall better or prepare yourself for these kind of things. Do you go to these things before you start climbing?
I think it just depends on how much effort how much you're strategizing or warming up for your climb. Some people do a ton of warm up, and that might involve at least the first couple times you climb, like getting used to falling. So that might mean going for something that you think you might not be able to get, knowing that you're probably going to fly off the wall, and then practice your fall when that happens. But I don't know, for me, it just like falling just kind of happens sometimes when you don't expect it, and it can like kind of knock the wind out of you. And it's really hard to, for me, I don't really understand how you're supposed to prepare for that. I think things, like I said, freak accidents happen, and sometimes you just fall wrong. Ideally, you don't like break a bone when you fall wrong. You might just like sprain something or like scrape yourself on the wall. But it is kind of like you just have to try it and figure out what works for you and push the boundaries a little bit.
Is it something that is similar to you in other areas of life? That notion of, I'm going to figure it out. I don't really necessarily know how it's going to work, but I know I can figure it out.
Yeah, that's actually cool to think about. I haven't really thought about it that way. I think, like you mentioned, that you're scared of heights. I am also scared of heights. But when you top rope, at least when I top rope, there is a point where you reach a height that you're very uncomfortable with. But the fact that you've like pushed through it, and when you top out, that's so exciting, and it's really validating, and it's empowering and shows you that you can do things that scare you, and then you can actually get better at them. That's something that I try to apply to other areas. Like another area might be public speaking. I kind of hate public speaking, but I always feel really good after I do it, because it's like pushing through that fear, especially if people connect with you and appreciate the things that you're saying. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I shared this and that was helpful for you, even though it was terrifying for me to do it. So that's kind of where I see the parallels. And I think it's good to experience parallels like that, like, because they kind of reinforce each other. I can do this really hard thing when I'm climbing. Maybe I can do this really hard thing at work that is scaring me.
I'll take your word for it that you're not very good. Obviously, I don't believe you, but let's say that is the case. How do you get better at climbing? What differentiates a beginner wall versus an intermediate wall?
So there's like a leveling system for climbs, and it's different in all countries. Like a lot of countries have different ones. I don't know how many there are. In the US, it starts at a V0 and goes to V10. I should have looked that up. It's a number that I probably will never experience. So when you first start out, you start with a V0. You probably do all the V0s in your gym. Typically, if you're somebody who wants to like regularly rock climb, you have a gym that you go to. It's your gym. And they change out the climbs every now and then, so you get to experience different things. But you do all the easy ones, then you start to level up. Let me try a V1, see what that's all about. Typically, the difference is like the holds. So for a V0, there's a hold called a jug. It's basically just, it's very easy to grab onto. Anyone can hold that. Then you start getting into like very pinchy holds or slopey holds. For bouldering, there's something called slab climbing, where instead of the wall is like, it's hard to describe. The angle of the wall is slightly different in that you have to use your feet more than your hands. So you're learning about footwork. Your footwork is improving. Your overall grip strength is improving. Maybe you have more power. A lot of it is technique, and I think that's why it's such a fascinating sport to me, because so many different types of people can do it. Like, you don't necessarily need to be extremely athletic or fit to rock climb. If you can learn the technique, that's kind of like where you can improve. And I think that's really cool. It's like a very diverse sport.
That's interesting, because my impression was that you need really good upper body strength because you're essentially pulling your own weight. Is that not necessarily the case?
It totally depends on the kind of climbing that you're doing. Like something that's really overhung, so that you're like climbing, not upside down, but like a cave type of shape. I think that takes a lot of upper body strength, and I really struggle with those. Even though I think I have decent upper body strength, I just cannot typically with those, because you're relying more on your upper body. Climbing up a wall, you're using your feet and your legs a lot more than maybe you're imagining. And you should be like, kind of the goal of climbing for a lot of people is it should be as easy as possible. Like you want to put in as least effort as possible so you don't tire yourself out. So you're looking for ways to make it easier. And in many cases, that's using your feet properly and pushing yourself up with your feet rather than grabbing a hold and pulling yourself up, because it's going to take way more energy, especially for like a top rope, like a long route that's all about endurance and flow. You really want to be using your whole body and not just your upper body, because you will definitely tire out and you won't be able to finish the climb, or you'll kind of like miss a hold if you're just fully pulling yourself up.
What sort of things do you do with a trainer?
Oh, yeah. So that was kind of like a new experience for me. I've had trainers for just like general fitness before, but like a climbing coach, she did a lot of mental exercises with me. Like she understood my fear, and I think seeing her confidence in climbing and like learning about her story actually gave me a lot of confidence. So she would focus a lot on technique, and like maybe when we were bouldering before we did top rope, she would say, okay, let's just try this climb. Let me see how you would do it. So that's also like part of climbing is reading a route. So, or like they call it a beta. So there's usually like one or two intended ways to do a climb from the route setter, but people will break the beta all the time if they find new ways to do something, they find something easier. So you kind of learn how to read what you should be doing to get up for the harder climbs, especially that are like a little bit more intricate. So we worked on that. She'd watch me do a climb, and then if I got stuck while I'm on it, she would make some suggestions, like you have a foothold over here, or like make sure you're looking and seeing what you have available to you. And then maybe she would do the climb after and like show me how she would do something. For top rope, she taught me about belaying. She was my belayer, and having that security of like a really great climber belaying you feels great. Like it takes a lot of the pressure off and the fear of going up really high on a wall. So she would do like drills with me, like up and down one wall, which is really exhausting. Or like do this climb and only use your feet in this specific spot, or like only use your hands, like kind of trying different things or picking climbs that look intimidating to me and then working through it so I can get kind of push past it. It's really helpful to have somebody to kind of push you in any part of life, but especially in like a hobby that you're trying to improve in.
When you look at a wall, do you plan the climb ahead of time, or do you improvise in a moment?
I think it's a little bit of both. Something that I've learned a lot about climbing from is watching professional sport climbing. I don't know if you've ever watched this, but it was actually, they've had sport climbing at the Olympics the past 2 years. So that's the only part of the Olympics that I paid attention to. But you'll see before those climbs, those climbers are all kind of getting together, and they'll like, you can't see my hands, this is a podcast, but they stand there and kind of like use their hands and like visualize where they're going to go and what the climb is. So that's like very high level. I think at that, like the highest level of the sport, yes, you're absolutely reading the route and you pretty much know what to expect. You might have to improvise if you run out of energy or something about the climb changes. When you're just starting out for like a V0 climb, you don't really need to do that. It's really straightforward because it's just going up and you see the holds. But as you get better, I think it does benefit you to kind of take the time a little bit before you start to figure out where you might go, because again, you're just conserving energy that way if you have an idea in your head of what the climb would be. I haven't really done a whole lot of that because I haven't really done very difficult climbs. For a top rope session, I will kind of look at the whole wall and see like, is there any part of this wall that I think is going to be challenging for me that I don't understand? Like, I'm not sure where my foot's going to be, or how do I get from, this part to this other part? But I've mostly just kind of done it on the fly while I'm on the wall.
Do you have walls you just can't get through?
I haven't climbed in a little while, so I'm sure when I'm actually climbing this, like later this week at a gym, I'm climbing at the gym where I broke my ankle. I haven't been to that gym since, so that'll be kind of interesting. I'm sure there will be walls that I will not be able to finish, and that will be something I can come back to as long as they're still there. You never know what the schedule is. Yeah, there's always something to work on. I think that's part of what I really like about it too, is like you can always get better and always improve in this sport. There's probably a weakness that you have that you could be working on, but it's also like very fun to work on those things. It's not really discouraging.
Is there a community aspect to it? Because the climb itself, I mean, it's you and your body against the wall, against the obstacles. There might be another person belaying you, but other than that, are there any group aspects to it?
Yeah, definitely. And much more so with bouldering, which is something that I kind of miss about like only focusing on bouldering before I learned how to rope climb, because it's very much communal. Like you'll go to the gym, and because there's no ropes involved and everything is kind of low, like most people are just kind of hanging out around the mats looking at the climbs. My gym has something called a slab lab, which is what I explained earlier, slab climbing, but they number them. And so you're kind of like competing with yourself, like to get up to finish them all. And because of that, there will be other people working on the same climb as you, and you can talk about it. You can share beta. They might get stuck on something and be like, hey, how did you do this thing? And suddenly you're talking to strangers about climbing. So it's like very community based. Top rope or any kind of rope climbing, not as much. And that's, I think, a little bit disappointing, but something I'm kind of working on, because you're up on the wall. You're not talking to anyone while you're up high on the wall, and your belayer is focusing on you. So they're not talking to anyone. So it's very much like a 2-person kind of activity. You're climbing, you have a belayer, and then you swap usually. But I've recently made some new friends that are into top rope. So I'm very excited to have, my partner is not super into top rope. He's like much more of a boulderer. I'm excited to have some more friends that can belay me and that I can belay. There's also a lot of gyms do this. My gym does this. You can just like put your name up at the front desk and ask for a partner to belay you, and you'll just get matched with like a random stranger. So it's a really cool way to meet someone new once you're confident belaying and being belayed by a stranger. So I think there's community aspects to all of it, really, but bouldering is definitely the most like communal.
Apologies for bringing work into this, but I know you're a very collaborative person, and I have no doubt that you love solving problems together with other people. How do you see the sort of solo puzzle solving here in rock climbing?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I really, it's like a very kind of deep internal thing that you go through when you're up on the wall, especially for top rope, for me at least, because like I said, there's no one around you. You're up high. You kind of like the sound of everything around you just kind of like fades away, and you internalize what you're doing, and you're sort of focusing on your breath and like the movement. So it's kind of like meditative in a way. And you can't necessarily like yell down to your person belaying like, hey, how do I do this? I'm stuck. They could try and be like, they can barely see you. They could try. But for me, I kind of like talk to myself, feel like, okay, I'm not sure how to do this. I'm going to try this. We'll see. I might fall, and that's okay because I'm on a rope, and I will just kind of take a little hit and then I can get back up. So that's always, I kind of do that like in other aspects of life. If I'm doing anything that's kind of intimidating or scary and I'm alone, just talk to myself and be like, okay, Katie, we're going to try this. We'll see what happens. Maybe it'll work out. The risk is pretty low here. And then you just kind of gain confidence again in yourself for talking yourself through something kind of scary. And then you get down from the climb and you're like, oh, I did this cool thing. And you explain the whole thing to the person belaying you, and it's really fun.
Are you curious about trying outdoor climbing?
Yeah, I mentioned that at the start because it feels like if you live in Southern California, what are you doing? You should be out there. For me, like bouldering outside is probably a lot easier because there's not a ton of equipment involved. You just need a crash pad, and there's a couple places like near-ish to me where you can do that. I would definitely only do rope climbing outside, which is a little bit different. And it's intimidating to me because in a gym, you see the holes, like I mentioned, all the different types of holds and then all the grading. I didn't mention that they're color-coded, so the climb that you're doing is all like the same color typically. So you know exactly where you're going. Outdoors, there are no holds. There might be some chalk. So when climbers use chalk on their hands to help keep their hands dry and make them extra sticky. So you might be able to see like where somebody else just did this route and kind of copy that. You can also, there's like tons of apps that outline all the like climbs that you can do outside, especially in places like Colorado where there's like a ton of climbing. I don't know, it seems really fun. It seems like a cool way to combine this hobby that I have of like doing something physical with my body and problem solving in a different way, and then also getting to be outside and enjoying nature. Hopefully I'll explore that area soon.
Hypothetically speaking, let's say there was someone who was afraid of heights.
Who could that be?
I have no idea. Hypothetical. But would love to hear some tips from you on how to get started.
Yes. I think I'm just going to speak mostly about top rope because that is my comfort zone area. And you maybe don't want to take my advice on bouldering, considering what happened to me. One thing my coach had me do, like the very first time I ever top roped, she had me periodically look down. I can't remember exactly what the cadence was, but anytime I got to, she would like yell up to me, like, look down. So I'd keep going up to like a specific set of holds and just taking a moment to look down and see how high up you are off the ground. Just like internalizing it, you're feeling your heart is racing, but you're kind of like trying to get your brain to understand that you are safe. It is okay. This is normal. I did that a couple of times. The first climb I did, I was like shaking and really scared. And it was not a very tall climb. You can start with different heights. You don't even have to go to the top if you don't want to. But after a couple of times of doing that, like it didn't scare me anymore. I think maybe the first time you get on the wall during a session, it's a little like, just need to kind of push through it. And maybe it's mostly just your body's response, like a physical response to being up high and have like a little bit of lingering fear. But once you push through that and just focus on the climb and your breath and like moving and getting to the top and then on the way down, it just becomes a lot easier. And I think that's a good way to deal with the fear of heights, confronting it up front in a safe way where you're not going to, fall, ideally.
That's awesome. Katie, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky these days. I think it's a fun place to be. I'm still on Twitter every now and then. So you can find me Blue Sky Twitter, LinkedIn, and I should mention my own design podcast. It's called The Complementary Podcast. I co-host it with Anthony Hobday, and you can check us out. We just talk about interface design related things generally. We had Guy on as a guest a couple weeks ago. It was awesome. So yeah, you can find us there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
This is all for this episode of Design Downtime. Thank you for joining me. And until next time, I hope you enjoy your downtime.